Good day, family. Much love to you. Hey. Hey, Adonis. Ooh, I didn't put what we're going to talk about in there today, but we're going to talk about fluctuations of light, fractals, and dance. Dance of light, the illusion. Okay, the latest thing I've been researching is really cool. I couldn't wait to share it with you. Okay, so we're fractals. Good day, family. Thank you. So we're fractals. I'm talking about the female principle today, the illusion of the Maya. We're going to talk about a dance of light. Okay? So we're going to talk about dance and the Daecans, the Daecans of the earth, which initiate the female principle. Which is the Shekinah. And how this ties in together with us being fractal. Which is really, really cool. So, bishops, okay, are servants. They're servants of a higher authority. So they're an intermediary who acted or spoke for a superior. So that's the way the fractal of the bishop that we see now, the bishop of the church, plays out in the community, right? It's kind of like a mediator between the different cultural vibrations of the parish, of the community, of the church community, and the voice between those that are the leaders of the church, right? And the initiation of what's being done, kind of like mom, you know what I'm saying? It's the female principle of the church because it's hands-on. It's the medicine, it's the way. An intercessor. The woman is the gateway. So we're talking about female principle and light and this dance of the illusion and the fractal and the way this breaks down. It is a dance. Life is like a dance, right? Remember that saying? So, Daecon, Deacon, right? And then we have Daena, which is Daena. That's the Shekinah. That's the female principle, okay? And the Shekinah is the Kundalini energy. Now, the Shekinah is a female aspect, and the female aspect is water. And the water aspect, please do not call me while I'm doing my live. That's kind of silly. I don't know if you realize how technology works, but it takes a lot of effort to put this together. Please don't call me right now. Okay, so that is the female principle or aspect, okay, of life. I'm going to show you the way that it breaks down. Now, in history, things were stolen, and the female principle has been really elusive. Like when I was looking for information about the female aspect of the occult systems and spirituality, I got a lot of elusiveness, a lot of ghosts, a lot of vague stuff. I really had to go hunting. And it's so interesting about how energy never dies, it only transforms. I love you too. Thank you. Thank you, family. It only transforms. So, whatever our ancestors gave us, according to the composition of light that you are, birthed via your mother's womb, right? Your date of birth, your social security, or your birth certificate has where you were born, the time, right? So that's your light composition. So we each have a portion of light according to our zodiac sign, right? That's your vector, your zone, okay? These words can play tricks with your mind. So we're going to look at some history. We know that our history has been stolen, been usurped. It's been reinterpreted. So we want to look at that. So right now we're going to look at this book. This is Sexual Symbolism, the History of Phallic Worship. It's kind of falling apart. So we're going to look at some history for a moment so we can get a look at this dance of light. Information is a light code frequency, and that depends on how you perceive it. How you perceive something depends on your intentions and your how your heart responds to it, how you empathize with it, how you can relate to it. That goes into an all is self kind of thing. So we're going to look at some history. Symbolism. The Orphic temples were, without doubt, emblems of the fundamental principle of the mystic faith of the ancients, the solar system, fire, the essence of the deity occupying the place of the sun, and the columns columns surrounding it as the subordinate parts of the universe, remains the worship of fire continued among the Greeks, even to the last, as appears from the sacred fires kept in the interior apartment of the Holy of Holies of amongst all their temples and places of worship. And through the Ammonanan Platonians, that's Platonics, the last confessors of the ancient religion, endeavored to concise something beyond the research of sense and perception as the essence of their supreme God. Okay, so we're talking about essence and symbolism, how what we're taking literally and morphed into a literal physical form of what God looked like with the religions that we see, or with the religion of Christianity. Well, I already showed you before how Mary is, gosh, I wish I had the name in front of me. I can't remember the name, but it's another deity. It falls into watch Zeitgeist, because I don't want to lose my thought, and it just goes into all this abstract stuff. What I'm trying to say, what I'm saying is that the deities change and they morph. It's a fluctuation of interpretation and intention, right? Depending on what region was utilizing those symbolisms for what, because they carried with it a power and an energy, and that's why I'm saying essence. Energy never dies, it only transforms. So here we have, in the vision of Ezekiel, God is described as descending upon the combined forms of the ego, the bull, and the lion, the emblems of the ethereal spirit, the creative and destructive powers, which were all united in the true God. Though hypostatically divided in the Syrian Trinity, man was compounded with them, as represented the real image of God according to the Jewish trilogy. So they're in history with the usurping. This is called, again, the sexual symbolism, the history of phallic worship, right? It also is combined with another book, The Practice of Sexual Superstition in Ancient Times During the Middle Ages. So this is a good historical reference place to look at how they morphed the different aspects of what we looked at as spirituality and a way to express ourselves. What we took as the essences and portrayed in physical form in real life. Now, all was Asia, all was Africa, it was a Asiatic African Muslim environment, all right? The continental plates were more together. Something happened within history where the continental plate shifted, things migrated. We hear different depictions of this in history, right? In anthropology, they give you an interpretation, and in history, they give you an interpretation. And in that, one of the examples I have of how they morphed the deities throughout different cultures is how we talk to each other through stories, through storytelling, okay? Now, although these are written down, these that I'm going to share with you, okay, are written down, they're morphs of the energy that we had as a people. And I'm enjoying sharing this with you because the programming is real, the indoctrination is real, and we grow up in this country, in America, and I'm seeing the world from this perspective of the indoctrination that I was given until I sought out further and actually learned to hear our ancestors and listen to them, listen to my heart, not be afraid of my own intentions, and if my intentions weren't right, to learn how to purify them, to clean them, to acknowledge them, right? And that's through shadow work. Pay attention to the embedding and the words and the meaning, right? How they morph. But don't get too attached to them. It's the essence, right? So we have Chinese mythology from A to Z. This stuff, you know, when you see the embedding, it gets really, you get really excited, you know, from A to Z. This is a light code frequency, right? And everything that we get pulls from the Iconian or the Hebrew alphabet, right? The light code frequency. How spirits and our ancestors speak to us through the archons, right? Through spirit. And how spirit penetrates through the dome, because we have three brains, right? The heart, the actual head that we're always paying attention to, and our stomach, right? Side note, which is one of the reasons why on the tree of life, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and love, right? Beauty and love, it fluctuates on that tree with Dayat, right? The movement of love and understanding and how we relate to things changes in relation to what we appreciate, right? So anyway, there's this god in China called Pangu. Now, in this book a while ago, I had showed you about this god called Pan. The god Pan in here is what the Christians morphed into Jesus. Now, like it or not, the symbolism is what we used in storytelling to move about the essences that was incorporated within a thing, within our minds and our hearts, you know, to give it a meaning, a feeling, a way to float, you know, because that's how we fly. It all starts with a thought. You had to think of the plane first, like Tesla thought of the parts first, and then he went out to pursue them. So we have more history, and this god Pangu in Chinese mythology, the creator of the world. According to the creation myth, Pangu was the child of vital yin and yang forces, hatched from the Greek from the great cosmic egg of chaos and the beginning of time. He slept in his shell for 18,000 years until one day he rose and stretched. As the shell broke, the yin and the heavy elements fell down and created the earth. Yang, the lighter elements, rose and created heaven. At first, the distance between these two places was very slight, but every day they moved apart another 10 feet until after 18,000 years, the space was vast. Pengu grew proportionately. When he died, his body became the surface of the earth. We're talking about Ptah, talking about Makuth. We're talking about a morph of a deity. Within the tree, you're getting into the Kabbalah, right? Geometrica. And the Hebrew alphabet light composition. This being the dome, this would be Malkuth, right? The Saturn energy, Earth. This would be the rainbow or the spectrum of light, all that information. Imagine you're this little line and all this stuff is the information coming at you from the computer. And you're like in this central space here, right? You're in that central spacing there. So you internalize the light like a candle, your dance of light, okay, with your 7-ray spectrum. Just stay with 7 rays. We don't have to make it too complicated, right? So we have this light comprehension, composition, your date of birth, your place and time, your social security number. You have your straw man. What? Your carbon beam. Are you getting burnt? Are they burning us? Burning the wick at both ends, and you have the Wiccan. See, energy never dies, it only forms. And one of my teachers who would teach the etymology taught about how the essences of words stayed with it no matter how many different languages you switched. As a matter of fact, a couple of them did. Santos Bonacci and Seven Bomer both mentioned this, and they studied in linguistics and stuff along with the symbolism and things in order to decode the matrix or human. And this makes us, being human, able to connect with one another, and this array. And our pivotal point is what's allotted to us due to our light composition. So whatever sign you are, wherever your fixated is, that's your pivotal point. That's the space where you're actually looking at everything from. That's what you're working with, right? The raw essence. So within the Hebrew alphabet, we also have the Geometrica, which is a part of the alphabet, okay? Which leads into the days of the week, the calendar, the alphabet, and the orbit, okay? All these are attached to the zodiac, which is the reason why we're talking about deacons. Deacons originally, like I said, these deacons of earth that initiate the female principle of the Vatican, right, are different, but they're portraying or usurping the same concept and sort of energy that we carried with us to interpret the deacons that regulate the essences of the earth. Okay, so we have a different regulation system that gives us a different value system, right? Hey, Thomas. Much love, family. So we have a different value system now. We have universal laws and principles that actually govern this spectrum of color. Okay, because frequency is color, it's vibrated sound, right? They're all synonymous with the tree, with sacred geometry, with the rainbow. This being the rainbow, and all that being like you're a tourist field and it's a donut being sucked in. It's not like it's still going in there. Energy never dies, it only transforms. So we're getting the spectrum of light, but can only catch the interpretations of those rays depending on what kind of seedling we are. Like plants catch a spectrum or a ray of light depending on, right? It's positioning to the light. And seeds are another whole thing, how they open up and how they correspond to the light frequency. That's all the Creator. So there's things within us that cannot be tampered with, that are directly connected. Good day, love. Hi, Robert. That are directly thank you, with our Creator. We're talking about the female principle. Okay? Talking about the dance of light, the elusiveness of women. I was talking with somebody, and they were talking about how women are very moody, right? We're known for being moody. Okay, so we're talking about the female principle and history and the way that it's been morphed. All right, back to the story. Pangu grew proportionately. That's where we left off. Then he died, and when he died, his body became, the surface of the earth. His breath became the wind and clouds, and his voice became the thunder and lightning. His head was the mountains. His eyes were the sun and moon, and the insects on his body became human beings, parasites. It's said that the ancient ones look at humans as if they're parasites. Side note. In some versions of his story, Pangu is said to have chiseled the world from chaos over the span of 18,000 years. Mythologists have long sought to find the origin of this story. The idea of the Creator, God, forming the Word, is the book, from chaos, or even the egg. From chaos, or even the egg in the midst of chaos, is not unique to China. No kidding. It sounds familiar. It sounds a lot like this story, the primordial egg, Pan, right? And Bacchus, the androgynous being, okay? The illusion, like in our minds, in our world now, we're male and female. We can't, many of us fought on a time when we were whole, when the male and female aspect was together, when there were more beings like that were functional. And we do have androgynous, although a lot of them die at birth. They still live. We do have androgynous beings that live right now. So that's not a myth. So why is it so difficult for us to understand? Good day. That these beings existed back then, even more whole and complete, and not fractured or broken due to the mind control and the indoctrination and just, the phases of what we call time, the space that we're in, and the things, the infractions, the things that have been done. Infractions, we've been marginalized and are thinking compartmentalized, you know what I'm saying? About the fractals and not seeing the spin in them, you know? Okay, so Brahma, a key figure in the Indian and Hindu mythology, for example, was born from the cosmic egg. Since Pangu does not appear in China mystic texts until the 3rd century CE, one theology holds that the story came from India, another that the myth of Pangu came from what is now Trinidad in the 6th century CE and was inserted into the earlier story. In the art, Pangu is sometimes shown as a dwarf wearing a bear skin. He may have the sun and moon or a hammer and chisel in his hands. He is accompanied by a quill, red bird or phoenix, tortoise, and dragon. I was thinking about the cardinal of the church, and I was thinking about the cardinal, that's Connecticut's bird, and I was thinking about the little red cardinal that I happen to see a lot around here now. Just cute. And how our ancestors speak to us. This is their morph of Pangu, of Pan. See, we have a picture of Pan in here too. I know we do. I don't know why this picture always makes me laugh, because definitely have been some evolution in the way that we think. Don't you feel that way too? Or was it de-evolution? It's weird because on one hand, yes, some things needed to be changed and tweaked, and on the other hand, the suppression is just so crazy, and some things need to be changed and tweaked. So that's why it's important. All right, well, I don't see the picture, but Pan has goat legs. Okay, and the Osiris mythos of Bacchus, whose censure is the sun incarnate with man. By the inscription of the pedestal, the attributes this personified is styled the savior of the world, a title always vulnerable under whatever image it is represented. It be represented. Okay, so it morphs. That's that page falling out right there. That's where I had it right there. Okay, there you go. So, you already know it's the goat, okay? And, also, I was just thinking Peter Pan and the shadow thing, you know, and the netherworld theme, okay? So we're done with this one. History. Alright, so see the morphing. Oh, bam. African-American folktales. Folktailing is very important. This is how we passed our culture along. Okay. Check this out. Check this out. Good day, family. So, are you liking this so far? Talking about the female principle and how it morphs and what it looks like, right? How this dance of light morphs. Here we go. Storytelling. Harris's works and those of his followers appear in this collection, but the majority of the stories go far beyond Uncle Remus and his friends, and the subjects they deal with, the audience to whom they are directed. Here we go again, how we are so flexible, right? Doggone it. That's what I needed. Where did I put that at? Did I bring it with me? Here's a book that I left. Okay. Okay? And whom is directed, and the historical times and geographical places they represent. Their geographical range takes us to the African American communities all over the New World, North, South, and Central America, and the Caribbean, including although most of the tales were collected in rural communities, a few texts are included from the city settings as far as from each other as the mainland of South America, Philadelphia, Paramaribo, and Cernium. So the Paramaribo, boy, I just trashed that whole name there. It's Paramaribo, and the Surinamium, that is Surinam. So, I mean, that comes from the culture that pronounces these words regularly, but we're going to go for it anyhow. Just be a little bit more careful about how we pronounce these words. Okay, the source included written accounts that predate the publications of Uncle Remus tales, later collections carried out by folklorists in the 1920s and the 1930s, and still other from the field work that I and my contemporaries have conducted since the invention of the tape recorder. Like other forms of African American creative inventions, song, dance, and a range of techniques of body ornament, cultural storytelling, body ornaments, song and dance. Look what that has morphed into now. What have they done to the frequency of music? They changed it. So it's not the earth frequency or the natural sounds that we hear. When they record, we're hearing it at a different frequency. When they tune the instruments to play with those other instruments, it's usually tuned at a frequency that's off of the earth natural pitch frequency. 432 hertz. These tales testify not only to their preservation, to the perseverance of an uprooted and enslaved people, but to the vitality of the cultural traditions they were able to maintain and build upon. The elements of storytelling were included in the only baggage they could carry with them. Their traditional styles of personal and social adornment, as well as their ways of performing and celebrating, we took with us on those tiers of trails. We took with us when our society changed. We took with us when those plates shifted We took with us every time we changed. We took the embedding with us. This very earth is us, and the composition is embedded within us, as I'm about to show in this dance of light, and how they interpreted the female spirit within the history of where did this female dance of light go? Where did this female image go? That was sacred. That was the female principle is a part of spirituality, and we use it every day, as I explained with the days of the week and the way that it breaks down the dance of light. And it's another form of the Shekinah, right? An energy, an invisible energy, you know, like the hairs on the back of your neck when you feel the presence but you don't see anything. Someone's aura is a form of Shekinah, is a form of invisible energy, it's a form of dark matter, you know what I'm saying? It's the subtle energies, okay, can vary in the fluctuations and how they present themselves. Good day, beloved. Sandra, hey sis. And the same way that the moon rays fluctuate, and we have the moon phases, right? That we know the moon as an aspect that moves the water aspect across the earth. And that's Shekinah. That's the female aspect. It's the waves. It's the wave, okay? And so the way that we are able to internalize in our brain, we have 3 brains, okay? It is the way that we are able to intellectualize or to be able to empathize with and find the practical application of whatever it is that we're looking at, right? Now, that's why the essences were so powerful that they didn't get rid of them. What they did was they only changed the names and they morphed these species. They took away the female aspect, changed it to a male, and then put the deacons in dresses and had them initiate the feminine aspect of the church through the Vatican, and took and hid all the other stuff, afraid of the chaos of the female principle, right? The part that they want to control. They say we're too wild. They say that we're too unpredictable, too emotional. A woman is the devil. Dance is evil. You know, but whirling, you know, dance is the female principle. It's a way to connect with the womb space, the creativity, that very vital essence part of ourselves. If we can't create, then we're just being dictated by that which can. The difference between consumerism and production, right? And being a parasite, or, you know, a pirate, or somebody that that has a ship that they want to be a parasite on, is the way that we internalize things. So remember the devil with the red dress on, the seductress, was it the sadist and sadism, the demoralization of the female principle. The female principle is on trial. The boat, the vessel, the straw man, your date of birth, hijacked. The answers to your mama's prayers and your daddy's prayers come on the boat through the womb space. They are brought in through the djeds. There are answers. Our ancestors are our deities. Our ancestors is just like we are a reflection of our Creator, or at least we're supposed to walk across the earth with the knowledge that we are. We're capable of that, being a light code being, not being the darkness, to be aware that we're a light code being, right? That we're a reflection of God, that we're light, that we're Allah, that we're the Creator, right? All is self, all is Allah, right? So, not getting mixed up in how these things morph through the different cultures, but to pay attention to the essences if you're able to take what you need and leave the rest, right? And that's how the Creator lives within us. So the female principle is on trial. It's been hijacked by the court. Insight and incitement, right? Indictment, the insight, the straw man. Justice is blind. Just us. Lady Liberty has the blindfold on. Maybe that's why, right? They mirror and copy God, and we just go for it. The justice is blind. Justice is flipped. It's just us. It was all us the whole time. All is self, right? But they hijacked the female principle. They hijacked all the good stuff. They hijacked the essences of the earth, the land. They put fences around it. Oh man, she's so good. She's so good, right? We married. They took it for wife, and they veiled it up, and they hijacked it, and they did all kinds of stuff that you can use metaphors for. You know what I'm saying? But they did this in a facetious way, okay? They hid the Daecans, which is the real universal principle and energy of the Creator, right in front of our face, by way of the way that it morphs out in our daily life, by way of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Solomon took the energy and the principles and the way that it plays out in the confines of our minds, the id, that part that was sleeping, where they say that we're using only, what is it, 10% of our brains? This 10% keeps coming up a lot. You're going to see why in a moment. You know, how they use the symbolism to jar that ancient part of us that is sleeping while we were sleeping. This is the ascension. This is the awakening. So, we have an array of understanding going on across the planet depending on your composition. So it's like sun rays, right? The information is a composition of sun rays, right? Of color, of sacred geometry, of this rainbow that's attached to the tree of life. And then we have the moon phases, which is also another energy on the planet, the male and female principle, more whole, okay? And the moon phases definitely change like the tides, change the waters and planting crops, right? And then we have Solomon, one little, which is soul, moon, and ion. The words don't lose their essence, no matter what culture that you move them across. Once you're able to identify certain things that are the essences of you. The womb space is a womb space. The female principle is a female principle, and the sun is the sun. The rays and intellect is a male trait, but the Shekinah and the emotion, the motion, the wave is female principle, right? So you have the Daecans and the Daena, the Shekinah and the Zodiac. Spin that. Yeah. You're a record, right? You're a diamond, recording, playing. Each person has their song. So we're in this vortex, and this dance we call life. Now I feel like Prince for a second. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here together. What was he trying to tell us? We are gathered here together in this dance we call life. Bam. Black dance from 1619 to today. Now, there's a vector of thought that I'm in, a spectrum of thought that I'm in. Vector, triangle, that's your mama. The womb space, right? A space to be measured, a phase, a wave. Lilith and Moon, Shaddai, the shadow, phases, the Shekinah. Spin. The Chi, the Chi Sephra is the Shekinah. A female aspect of the Supreme Being is Jungarian terminology. It's spin, it's chi, it's dance, it's the transformation, it's rebirth. And that was in the dictionary of symbols that I didn't get to yet. Okay, so we're on that zodiac, right? That's what I want to get to first. No, I'm ahead of myself. Let me slow down for a second. Okay, we're going to do this first. We're going to stick with the history because we're into embedding, right? This is all embedding. Energy never dies. It only transforms, and I'm showing you this face. I'm showing you this elusiveness, this elusive face. Good day, beloved. Hi, immortal. Much love, family. Okay, so that's what I was looking for, the time period. Okay, yeah. All right, so we're into BCE, 1300 BCE, and between 970 BCE and 1300 BCE, and we're also, yeah, okay, so we're like in an intermediate period, and also it was like the last stage, you know, when we're looking at how things were changing. It's intermediate because things were changing, okay? In history, it was a phase. We're catching this on a phase, and that's when a lot of the hijacking happened. And that's why I wanted to let you know the period in which, you know, I'm in. Because this is when the things that were a part of our culture, like the Yubara, you know, and the Sibyls, and the leopard, panther, serpent clans, you know, the historical accounts that Mama Wata puts in the book on how the female deity of the Sibyls and the Draconian lineage morphed and was usurped and stolen, and how we're looking at that now depicted pretty much as a patriarchal, male dominant society, okay? And that's important because we have phallus land. Overlooking the responsibility they have to give a credit spiritually to the womb space, okay, to the female principle, and how that's definitely set things off balance, okay? So we're putting it back in balance right now, partially through our conceptualizing what this looks like. So I'm showing you this elusive lady, Liberty, with the blindfold on. I'm taking it off. Black bodies. Let's start here. The slave trade. Now, I'm not talking about those indigenous, because there were different parts to the Atlantic slave trade. It wasn't just the ships. It was also the indigenous, right? And like the Seminole, right? Which is how the indigenous Africans and those enslaved Africans ended up at one point together. And we called them the Gullah Geechee soldiers at one point. Okay. The gigantic drum that was African's heart and soul throbbed and pulsed many years before they had entered Africa and taken her people. And now, in the 15th century, it was beginning again, even though sanctioned by the Pope Felix V. This rape of Africa was no different from the others. Okay? So we're seeing, thank you, beloved. I'm loving being able to share this with like-minded family. Much love to you and yours. Energy never dies, it only transforms. Right? So we're changing the consciousness grid right now, even being willing to conceptualize this, to spend our time here instead of somewhere else. Back to the book. Black bodies poured out of Africa as early as the 1518. Slaves were being imported to the West Indies, particularly to the island of Hispaniola, that's Haiti. By 1540, 10,000s of Negroes a year were being imported, and according to the one estimate, by the end of the 16th century, there were already 900,000 black slaves in the West Indies. Okay? I'm going to skip ahead and talk about, were these slaves indeed totally devoted to the native culture? Were they savages with no knowledge of their ancestry? Some earlier American scholars believed that this and developed theories based on what was later shown to be ignorance and bias. Further studies has demonstrated that the Africans of the slave era did indeed have cultural background, and highly developed one at that. No kidding. Yeah, because that's the image that they didn't want to show us. Because they didn't want to show us that. They didn't want to show us our Moorish background. They didn't want to show us our Moses was, amorphed from some other deity. They didn't want to show us that. They didn't want to empower us through image, because imagery, it holds, in essence, it is powerful. That's why we value it so much. But we shouldn't have valued it that much, because there's other things that come into play other than just image, It's how it's utilized and how we feel about it. How does it portray and pan out in real everyday life? Back to the book. A rich African mythology developed through the centuries and was spread by word of mouth from generation to generation. Folk tales, riddles, proverbs, poetry, the examples of African heritage. An embedding of our natural spirituality and how we share our essence with one another. And we are a fractal, like Apollo, right? We are the tree. We are a fractal, an actual fractal composition of the way our Creator speaks to us in a way. If you want to look at the Kabbalah and the Tree of Life, right? And you can conceptualize and internalize the different ways that our Creator can speak to us through light code frequency, broke down through information, through the words and letters that are glyphs, symbols, right? Whether the symbol is a color or whether the symbol is sacred geometry, you're going to be able to get some of the in-depthness of all itself, the Baz, the Kaz, the ship. Let's share some more. Slave and captains ashore, a bargain for slaves were sometimes entertained by native slave traders. Such an event was related to Captain Theodore Canot, who, as a guest of the mulatto trader Mongo John, observed that a whirling circle of a half-stripped girl danced to the monotonous beat of a tom-tom. What? Is that an astrology term, tom-toms? I heard Sansa Bonanici talk about the tom-toms. You know, the percussion. Presently, the formal ring was broken, and each female stepping out singularly danced according to her individual fancy. Some were wild, some were soft, some were tame, some were fiery, and after so many years, I have no distant recollection of their characteristic movements. Like snowflakes, each dance different, composition, a fleeting moment of time, a dance of light. But what about those dances of light that we actually conceptualized, that were so strong that we made language out of them, that we made traditions out of them, that we pulled out of ourselves and can see the corresponding frequencies, and we triangulated? That's what you have to do in order to pull something from the ether down, is be able to find a value, to be able to mate with it, you know what I'm saying, to dance with it. It's a dance of light in our minds. It all starts with a thought. John Barbot, on the one of his many trips to the African coast, described a dance which he witnessed in Nigeria. Peep the places and the time in the early 1700s. So this is a little later, but not really, not that much later. They sit up and dance. Their dances are commonly in a round, singing the next thing that occurs, whether sense or nonsense. Some of them stand in the middle of a ring, holding one hand on their head and the other behind their waist, advancing, strutting out their belly forwards and beating very hard with their feet on the ground. Others clap their hands to the noise of a kettle or a calabash fitted for a musical instrument. When young men or boys dance with maidens or women, both besides always made abundance of lavishness gestures, and every now and then each take draught of the palm wine to ensure the spot. Now they'd like them to take the palm wine so that they would dance more. Okay? The entrance to the slave pen was commanded by a cannon, while in the center of the square one left a vacant space wherein one often seen hundreds of slaves guarded by a dozen sick musketeers singing, drumming, and dancing after their meal. This is the history, family. But not all of our history. This is a segmented depiction of our history. But it is valid in this point where I'm speaking of the essence of us. We are in the melting pot, they call this. This is the symbolism of the ship. This is also on the Egyptian hieroglyphs, right? The ship. And so this shows you the embedding, right? Like the tree, like the dimensions of things that we go through, like the tunnels and the phases of the underworld, right? The tree of life and the Kabbalah, the different interpretations and spaces that we can internalize, and all of it depending on our emotional, spiritual, physical composition that we were allotted from the Djed. Postscript, our parents' prayers, hopes, dreams, right? Like a gap, a missing space. Like dance is like a gap. However, according to Dr. Thomas, this is back in the book, a surgeon on board the Brooksies in a 1783 voyage, there was a ceremony held immediately after the morning meal called Dancing the Slaves. Those were the irons were ordered to stand up and make what motions they could, leaving a passage for such as were out of irons to dance around the deck. Dancing the slaves on board the ship was a common occurrence. It was encouraged for the economic reasons. Slaves who had been exercised looked better and brought a higher price. Wall Street. In the history of Wall Street and walking the slaves from, up Wall Street, it just got in my brain for a second. Get back to the book. It brought the slaves a higher price. Getting slaves on deck also afforded time to clean out the holds below. Such dancing was usually encouraged by a cat o' nine tails. That's a whip, in the westerns where they shoot the gun, dance, dance, dance. Tap dancing for the devil. A lot of these little sayings and stuff come from a space, even you know what, I'm not even gonna go there because my brain goes all over the place. And there's this dance, Tan, not the Tan. Anyway, not gonna go there. If I remember, if I find it, I will let you know. Yeah, because I was looking up dance. It's gonna bother me if I don't just do it. Just do it. Oh, that's where it is. That's why I didn't. Okay, so anyway, in theater, okay, and even the theater and the court system is a fractal model of a way that energy circulates like a computer. And even those shapes alone jar something within our unconscious mind, which is a part of the embedding, that part that was sleeping that we forgot, that they put asleep, that we were locked out of due to our behavior, our lack of accountability. So that's waking up again, where we see these symbols and we're like, what? I know what that is. I know that, that triggers something in us. This is we're our ship and our vessel, right? And our ka. So he said, in order to keep them the slaves in good health, it was usual to make them dance. It was the business of the chief mate to make the men dance, and the second mate dance the women, but this was only done by means of frequent use of the cat. So we wasn't trying to dance. We was trying to die. They force fed us and they made us dance. Tried to keep us. They threw people over the ship, and some of us jumped over the ship. It was a hot mess, you know. And what was the name of the first ship? Actually means Jesus. What was the name of that first ship? Was it Amadas? I'm not sure. Okay. So I'm going to read you some of this history aboard the ships and how dance came to us, okay? Exercise being deemed necessary for the preservation of the slaves, held they are sometimes obligated to dance when the weather will permit their coming on deck. If they do go about it regularly or do not move with agility, they are flogged. A person standing by them all the time with a cat o' nine tails in his hand for that purpose. Their music upon these oceans consists of a drum, sometimes with only one head, and when that was worn out, they do not scruple to make use of the bottom of one of the tubs. The poor wretches are frequently compelled to sing also, but when they do so, their songs generally, as many naturally be expected, melancholy laments of their exile from their native country. In testimony before the Select Committee of the British House of Commissions in 1791, Falconbridge reported after meals they ate, the slaves, after the slaves ate, they made the jump in their irons. This was called dancing by the slave dealers, and every ship on the Falconbridge served, he had to flog such slaves as would not jump. The same committee also heard the testimonies of another slave ship surgeon, of a Mr. Claxton, that's Claxton. The parts on which their shackles were fastened are often exhilarated by the violent exercise that they are forced to take, in which they are made many grievous complaints to the Claxton, the ship doctor. In his ship, even those who had the flux, scurvy, and such ornamentation swell on their legs as made it painful to them to move at all, were compelled to dance by the cat. So it didn't matter if they were sick, if they had scurvy, which could easily have been cured with orange pills or some other citrus, but they didn't have knowledge of those things, right? There was a language barrier. They didn't have knowledge of those roots and herbs and things. They definitely weren't interested in those things. They were interested in flesh. Since many of the captains also owned stock in the slaving companies, they were reluctant to say anything derogatory about the trade, even after retirement. It soon be noted that the treatment of the seamen, what's your kundalini doing? Are you spilling your semen? That was a little side note. Was often nearly as brutal as of the slaves, and that the murder of many such seamen was disclosed in the hearings to abolish the British slave trade? What happens to the whistleblower? What time are we in right now? This is the spiritual warfare. There's consequences, you know, regardless of what direction you go in, to be picked off by ignorance or be picked off because you're wise. To be picked off because you're helping or be picked off because you have no alliances and you weren't trying to help at all, you know, versus trying to get in a position to even be lined up with universal law in a different way, right? Nevertheless, if a seaman wished to sail safely on another's slaving expedition, he kept his mouth shut, despite several accounts taken from journals of such seamen and captains are in existence where they open their mouth. Okay? We often at sea, this is one captain speaking, Philip's journal in 1694, okay? Time, period, sector, right? A space. We often at sea in the evenings would let the slaves come up into the sun to air themselves and make them jump and dance for an hour or two. Our bagpipes, harp, and fiddle, by which exercise to the presence them in health. But notwithstanding all endeavor, 'twas my hard fortune to have great sickness and mortality among them. John Barbat, who had observed the dance of the Nigerians, also made some general observation on the management of slaves aboard ships. He wrote, "Towards the evening, they, the slaves, diverted themselves on the deck as they thought fit, coming, conversating together, others dancing, singing, and sporting after the manner which pleased them highly, and often made us pastime." What are we right now allowed to be, as long as it's counterproductive? Pastime, entertainment. Just showing you the mentality from the essences being that which depicted the essence of the creator to the essence of a false creator, a false god, depicting what it wanted to eat and desired from us, from what our ancestors wanted to eat and desire from us as a composition of flesh, from it to live out as a, through the light composition, right? It lives out this light code frequency, this energy, right? It lives through us. Some think it might be mitochondria. It's a serpent, right? It's a Kundalini energy. It's a water principle, right? It's the Shekinah. These are the different faces of what this might present itself as. It's the spiritual energy, it's the subtle energies, it's the dark matter, okay? Okay. Richard Drake, back to the book, spent 50 years in slave trade, all of them after the official obligation of the trade in England. And at the age of 12, he left England for Boston, and of some 1800, and from 1807 to 1857, he was engaged in the slave trade. He joined the American uncle, and the two of them, he joined his American uncle, and the two of them passed themselves off as Spaniards so that they could continue buying and selling slaves. Drake carried slaves to Brazil, Honduras, Sebi, and Florida, where they were seasoned and then smuggled into the United States. They were broken, y'all, seasoned. If there was any problems, there wasn't any problems anymore by the time they got to the United States for work on the cotton plantations. What? While Drake's autobiography, Revelations of Slave Smuggling, must be an approach with caution as an authentic account of the slave trade. He was used as a reference in this book, Black Dance. that I got from my dance teacher as reading material in college while studying dance, African dance. Also jazz, jazz and African dance, and just anywho. It's funny how you have to study all this dance to study one other kind of dance. You have to take all these other writing classes just to take creative writing. This is really weird. You gotta listen to everybody else's stuff before you can have your own stuff. That's the way they do it. And it was, I'm going through, oh, I don't know how much we lost. I didn't know that I lost anything. Oh boy, I hope I didn't lose a lot. That really sucks. Well, I hope that it was still here and that I didn't lose a whole book or something. Now, I'm long-winded with this because I need to get this whole message out in a section, okay, about the female principle and how it breaks down into the zodiac, which is actually the Daecans, okay, and how that is a dance of life, and you know that's where we get dance from. And I want to show you the references and how this morphed into our material in our American culture. You don't have to stay. You can rewind. You can wait until I finish. Put it on the YouTube at Regina's Rabbit Hole, Siren Buddha Medicine, because this is talk therapy in the way that we change the consciousness grid, the way that we heal things, right? It's a healing tool, talk therapy, and storytelling. Okay, so that's the other embedding, part of this, right? November 2nd, 1802. Pedro, my assistant, reports one of our patients blind. We had half the gangs on deck today, sick for exercises. They danced and sung under the driver's whip, but are far from sprightly. Captain Lecarch, that's Leclerc, says he never knew such a sluggish set, yet they all appeared healthy. The binds mentioned by Drake, now remember spiritual energy and dis-ease is dis-ease. And in their mind, you're looking at them like animals and cattle and can't understand why they're not jolly, being beat. If that's not demonic, on a lower scale, as in non-comprehension, you know what I'm saying? Like the dark side is in ignorance, I don't know what is. Okay. The blindness mentioned by Drake was common occurrence on the slave ships and was highly dreaded by all. The disease was called ophthalmia, ophthalma, and on some ships affected every person aboard. Temporary blindness occurred. It did not disappear within 10 days. It became permanent. Okay? On an undated voyage aboard the Madrania, that's Miranda, Drake reported that our blacks were a good-natured set and jumped to the last so promptly that there was not much occasion for scorning their naked flanks. We had tambourines on board, which some of the younger Durigs fought for regularly, and every evening were enjoyed the novelty of African war songs and ring dances fore and aft, with the satisfaction of feeling that these pleasant exercises were keeping our stock in fine condition, and of course enhancing our prospect of a profitable voyage, because they didn't want sick cargo. Conditions varied from ship to ship, and the circumstances aboard the Brazilian Bring Galore appeared to distance even Drake. Now remember, the strawman stuff is actually a whole nother rabbit hole section to jump into, because that's symbolic of not only did certain shapes emit a frequency that more likely made certain groups in the populace want to submit because of their shapes, because we're jarred and triggered through the unconscious mind, that sleeping part of ourselves, like it's dreaming, by way of shapes, right? And these shapes still have a vibrational frequency, whether they're small where we can see them and we're reading them, or whether they're vast over our head, or whether they're the shapes of cities like Washington, D.C. You know what I'm saying? They're still emanating a frequency, because energy never dies, it only transforms. And these are the energy and the essences, like even in a name, right? These are the kind of things, even within us, because we're fractal. And we are the essence of the composition of all that is ourself, the creator. The energies in the composition of our creator, the male and female principle, right? Breaks down into the ion, that's the Christ principle, that's us. And so we can develop ourselves to walk in enlightenment and a Christ-like, you know what I'm saying, a spirituality, a space, right? Space of being, way of being. And that shows the different morph. You see what I'm saying? And that's what we've done with everything, and what they did to usurp. Though we forgot that concept, and we're looking at everything compartmentalized and literal. And it can't be so if we're able to get a proper internalization of any of these things. Once off the coast, the ship became half bellum and half brothel. Ruse, our captain, and his two mates set an example of reckless wickedness, and not by drinking and rioting could be seen among the men. They stripped themselves and danced with black wrenches. Wrist, our crazy mulatto cook, played the fiddle. No attempt at discipline, but rum and lewdness seemed to rule all. The same kind of methods going on to make us drop our spiritual guards, you know, and forget who we are, to just succumb, you know what I'm saying, to the booze and the spirits, booze. Here we go, you know what I'm saying, again, a composition of different fermented essences of the earth, grains and stuff like that, right, and fruits and stuff. Spirits. And the earth is us, a composition of us. Energy never dies, it only transforms. So we're not realizing what it is that we're in this matrix, a composition, right, of different levels, different energy compositions of zeros and ones, of essences, of interpretations of the elements, fire, water, earth, air, and ether, right? Gerald Pickard, a London physician, hearing of the evils of slavery, decided to see for himself the conditions of the slavers and the slaves, and secured permission to board a ship which had just anchored the Barbados. Their sleeping berths were the naked boards, divided into two cowarded parts. They reposed during the night upon the bare planks below, the males on the main deck, the females upon the deck of the aft cabin. In the daytime they were not allowed to remain in the place where they had slept, but were kept mostly upon the deck, the open deck, where they were made to exercise and encouraged by the music of their loved banjar to dancing the cheerfulness. Picard continued his description with the vivid and inert picture of the dance aboard the slave ship. We saw them dance and heard them sing, and in dancing they scurried, moved their feet down through about the arms, and twisted and whirled with and wrenched their bodies into multiple distinguishing and independent attitudes. The song was wild and yelled, devoid of all softness and harmony, and loudly chanted and harsh melancholy. The pain, the utterances of what they were going on inside is what they were doing, right? It came across. In dance, I learned that we honored, not worshipped, but took heed to, paid attention to the different attributes and principles of. And I'm not saying there wasn't a time when people did get into worshiping and doing all kinds of twisted stuff, and that that's the tweaking part that needed to be done. But to jump the whole thing of who you are in the garbage because somebody tampered with it is in the other direction, and what we have been doing now is to not look at all at where we come from or who we are. In essence, this is us. Take what you need and leave the rest. Tweak it, but own self, right? They would take things like a bird and do the dance of the bird, and it wasn't out of worship, it was out of admiration, or to pay homage to particular attributes or features or essences of a particular thing. And so that bird became they didn't want us doing those vigorous movements and like things like that in civilization. They copied the dance into a ballet. That's what we have as ballet, okay? As the dances that they had that were restricted, they took our free-flowing movements that we did to connect with our creator and with the essences of ourselves, the chaos, the female principle, the free-flowing movement, and they hacked it up, compartmentalized it, segmented it, like moon phases, you know what I'm saying? Only they stayed like that. And they gave it a depiction so that they could easily interpret it. And they called it certain things, like ballet being the swan dance and and the ballet. And if you notice, right, some of the connotations of the ship and some of the wording, right, like semen and stuff, being synonymous with some of the occultism or Masonry terminology, right? Masonic terminology. So he said, we saw them dance and heard them sing. In dancing, they scarcely moved their feet, but threw about their arms and twisted. Okay, I read that part. Another observer of Sir William Young saw the slightly differentiated picture of life aboard the slave ship that presented by Picard after a visit to St. Vincent's Island in the Caribbean. He recorded the following observation on December 16, 1791. 3 Guinea ships, being the harbor full of slaves from Africa, I testified I wish to visit the ships, purposeless of sail. I would have visited them privately and unexpectedly, but it was not practical. Everything was prepared for our visit, as least observing eye might have discovered. In particular, I was disgusted with the general jumping and dancing of the Negroes on deck, which some, and perhaps many of them, did voluntarily, but under force or controlled sick. For I saw a sailor more than once catch those rudely by the arm who had ceased to dancing, and by gesture menace them to repeat their motion, to clap their hands, and to shout their song, "Ya, ya!" which I understood them to mean friends. So it went, and so they came, and I black stream from Africa to the Americans. The Africans was forced to dance in bondage and under the lash. He danced because the white ruler wants good stock, his stock in good condition. He danced not for love, nor joy, nor religious celebration, okay? Nor even to pass the time. He danced in answer to the whip. He danced for survival. The Africans danced in a ring. They danced in the shackles. They jumped up and rattled their chains. They wrenched their twisted, disgusted, and indecent attitudes. This they did to the accompaniment of the drum, sometimes a broken drum or kettle, and sometimes even a relief pot. They beat the drum, followed the captives across the Atlantic to their home in the New World. The drum was the heartbeat of our community. Is how we spoke to one another. The sound of the drum could reverberate from one community to another before you could walk there. You could hear sound reverberate, you know. And so when we got here to America, the dance, right, the female principle that carried the Shekinah, the water aspect, right, was dominated by the female the male aspect, and they called it voodoo, you know. We turned it into voodoo. We had to change up again, okay. Voodoo, and valid dux and voodoo, mysteries, organic rituals, cannibalism, black magic, sorcery, drums and throbbing, naked bodies gleaming in the firelight, nevertheless, has so been written with so little understanding and truth. Okay? So the way that they depicted us is definitely not right. You know? Just what is voodoo? Where did it come from? And how did it develop in the islands of the West Indies? What is the dance of the voodoos? Was it nothing more than a sexual orgy, or was it part of a meaningful religion? Slaves were brought to the New World primarily from the Western religion of Africa and included in the Ashanti, Congolese, Dawamine, Ibu, Koto, Mantian, European, and similar tribes. Hope you can flip that back so you can see it the right way, spelled the right way, because you're probably looking at it backwards. So here's our history. These tribes, to understand the development of religion of the West Indies, sometimes the African religion must be known. The religion of West Africa, the varieties from the tribe to the tribe had three primary characteristics. Okay? Three primary characteristics, not one. First, religion was a part of living, a part of the daily routine of life, and not something to be attended on Sunday and forgotten the remainder of the week. What? I know you like that one, right, Thomas? Yeah. They said religion was not something to just be done on Sunday and left the rest of the week. We took it very seriously. Secondly, religious practice included much ritual, which in some instances was strictly set, while in others improvised. Okay, so there was a non-composition, so it was chaos, radical, while others practiced things that were a particular way. So we had a male and female principle in there, right? Thirdly, this ritual was primarily carried out through song and dance, and end result was the supreme experience, was possession. Possession was the ultimate religious experience. Who is trying to be God? Who is possessing us? Who has our stuff? Who are we under possession to? What is the slave? Beholden to, under possession of. Now watch the words, okay? Possession, possessed by a God who is trying to be God. In God we trust. We got their face all over the currency. The currency is the Shekinah energy, the movement, right? It's the wave. It's the female principle. Who has the female principle on lockdown? And who's agreeing with it? In order to keep that mind fixated in a vibrational frequency, fixated on the male principle, wanting to keep it that way, there has to be something that they're going to get out of it, right? And that's just the most least amount. Do you know what I'm saying? Lost, like the full body and essence, the full meaning lost in translation. Do you know what I'm saying? The way that the female principle is being depicted in our society today. If you know you got a woman like that, and that she came from all that, that your mama, that your sister, that your cousin, that your niece, right, is all that, then you know, like all of a sudden you all that too. My casa su casa. So if we can be, then you can be. How are you going to be great as men, but what you came out of is not great? And so that's a trick of the mind to make the dominant male principle feel that by minimizing and belittling the female principle, that it makes him more masculine, because it doesn't. And that's what our ancestors knew. They had the collaboration between the male and female principles more balanced. And it showed within our culture, within the way that we communicate with one another, the male and female principle. Remember when I was reading about Pangu and how it was the yin and yang and the male and female principle depicted within the Asian culture, right? And all of Africa. Possessed by God, back to the book. This dancing experience, right, in essence would lead to being spoken to. Who are these people that say they're the deacons and that they're the parishioners of the church? They're portraying the message of God, right? They're initiating the word of God, right? Through the Bible, they're ambassadors of the Most High, right? So that's initiating the word of God. So they're saying that they're the ones who are able to interpret this, and that would mean that they have to be under possession. That they have to have the right to. They have the rights. You know, that word, to have something or to own something, is one and the same. To possess something or to be possessed. You can't do something to somebody without it being done to you. Even in allowing it. Even if we don't realize what we just did. Okay, possessed by God, who spoke through one who was the aim of the drumming and dancing. Okay, was to get in connection with our Creator. Many of the slaves imported to the West Indies were priests and religious leaders, and a number of surviving rituals have been shown to a similar to those performed in Africa, since the slave owners recognized their position by bringing Christianity to the African Africans, the slaves were introduced almost immediately by their arrival to the Christian and unusually Catholic doctrine. Catholicism more lenient in its view of slaves than the Protestant denominations was assimilated with African beliefs. The syncretism of Catholic dogma and African beliefs led to Voodooism. According to the Dictionary of Folklore, Mythology, and Legend, which is the reason why I chose to read to you from Mythology, Folklore, and Legend. Okay? It's how we embed the symbolism in our culture and the storytelling. The word voodoo, V-O-D-U, is the Darmanian term for deity. Herskovitz, that's Herskovits, wrote the section of voodoo on the Dictionary of Folklore and stated that in Haiti the word voodoo is spelled Valdou, that's V-A-U-D-O-U, and is the name of the African-derived popular cults and that comprise the religious belief systems of a large proportion of people. Ikara Bourgoudin, an excellent article, wrote that the word voodoo meant ancestor or ancient spirits, okay? Fire, water, earth, air, and ether are earth spirits, are the essences of who we are. We're already a composition. We already did this. This is what we are, right? Recognizing that, right? What our composition is another way to plug in. It's like one of the plugs, you know what I'm saying? How you going to plug in if you don't even know you plug? There's a plug there. You don't. You can't. You have to have a way to conceptualize. It all starts with a thought. That's why it's the first place to start, is that it is. The second one is to think on it, to conceptualize it. That's divination, to pull it out, right? And to mingle with it is to actually take on a trait, to even be able to comprehend with it, because that would mean that you're a part of that life force, even to be able to comprehend. You can't mingle with a frequency that you don't recognize. You really don't. You don't know what it is. Darkness comprehends the light not, because it doesn't recognize the frequency. It doesn't recognize the composition. It isn't there yet. It hasn't went through the tunnel, the dance of light. Okay. He wrote the section of voodoo in the Dictionary of Folklore and stating that Haiti, the word voodoo is spelled V-A-U-D-O-U, and the name of the African-derived popular cults that comprise the religious belief systems of a large proportion of the people. Oh, I already read that part. I'm sorry, I had lost my space. Yes, voodoo meant ancestor or ancestral spirit. Okay. And Santo Domingo, this is 1790s, a particular, in the Western French proportion, there existed for a long time a type of dance called the Valdux. That's V-A-U-D-O-U-X. Here we're getting into it. I'm sweating. Which requires 2 or 4 people, and which is characterized by movements where it seems that the upper part of the body, the head, and the shoulders all move on springs. The dance is also accompanied by a drum and the hand clapping and chanting chorus. I had no idea where it got its name, but it has such an effect on the blacks that they sometimes faint from dancing it. Okay? Frequency, vibration, aware back then of the power that frequency and vibration and rhythms and stuff can have on a person. 1790s. Why do you think when we got here they started changing stuff around to suit their cultural benefits for this energy and change it into their likeness? Because they wanted to be God and told us that our God was dead. Our composition of society and the way that we looked at things, the way that we perceived things, that part of ourselves that was sleeping was dead, was dormant, and went to sleep. But now we can conceptualize that and gather back our missing pieces. The dance described by Saint Mary, as shall be seen, was the Zephallus. That's Zepaulles. The dance done with the shoulders, as the French name implies, and one of the dances of voodoo rites. Voodoo then was a series of elaborate rituals of songs and dance, which the ultimate experience being possession by one of the more gods, or, in this case, the Loa. The Loa is a term for God used in Haiti voodoo. The chief Loa being Damballa, that's Damball, or serpent god. Interestingly enough, these Loa, while mainly of African derivation, have their counterparts and Catholic saints, and all can be identified in pictures of the saints, which is the reason why our ancestors hid these saints within the tarot card. Our magic and our part of our understanding of the tree of life and the flux of energies was hidden within the tarot card. Okay? And that's why the tarot cards line up synonymously with the tree of life and ether energies. Because energy never dies, it only transforms. And we have these spaces that drive this energy from above, from here, which is below, and how we internalize it, right? How we read it, okay? How we conceptualize it. For example, a picture of St. Patrick leading the snakes out of Ireland was used to represent Damballa, the serpent god, Damballa. Writings in 1797, St. Mary asserted that the Adradas blacks, that's Aradas, were the true cultists of the voodoo, and according to them, the Vodux designs and all-powerful supernatural beings upon whom all servants, upon whom all the events which take place on the globe depend. This being is the non-poisonous snake. Okay? Durham reported that the three main divisions of the Haitian Valdoon, these are the true Valdoon, or Reda, Dalmi, the Petro, the variations of divisions of Congo, Okay, so this is what I'm reading. Page. I do that because sometimes you can just pause, and you know, if you have those screens, you know, you can zoom in or whatever. You can take a picture. If you really need to see something, you can find ways to look at it. If somebody's showing you something, I've done that. Okay, terms for a group for Haitian deities of the Voodoo cult was themselves comprised one pantheon, others being the Petro, Congo, and Ibu gods. The word is a contradiction of the name of the old capital of the Daemonian kingdom of West Africa, Alada or Arada. The derivation is confirmed by the fact that the majority of the Rada deities are of Daemonian origin. Daemonian, Asian, African, Islamic backgrounds, right? The term for the group Haitian deities of the Voodoo cult, who themselves comprise one pantheon. Oh, read that. Each of the division has its own type of drums, songs, dances, and loa that exist. Each family can incorporate its dead ancestors into the form of the loa, much as Catholic saints become canonized. Alfred Methrax, discussing the loa, said that man has always made his gods in his own image, and thus is strikingly true of Haiti. The loa have the taste of modern man, his morality, and his ambitions. Do you hear that? That's like man has always made God in his image. You know, we read that God made man in his image, and I was thinking about when Alexander, you know, went to Egypt and he wanted to be a god and have a god made in his image, you know. And, you know, from there, you know, they realized the power in that. But only saw power. They weren't really seeing all the other things because it wasn't their essences, and the intention, you know, was wrong. And although the fragments have lasted this long, and what we define this culture on this new wave that's coming in with us. Thank you, beloved. This new wave that we're riding on is much more substantial, and is a collaboration of, you know, gathering all our information and essences from all four parts of the globe. You know what I'm saying? To remove ignorance alone is power. If you turn a light on in the room, it still gives you more authority and power, because somehow now you feel like you can see something inside you. You know what I'm saying? Clears things up. It's like, okay, well now it's not just a zero, it's just a vacant space. Now I can see, and I can abstract something from where I am, right? So you have something to fixate in on, and that's part of our divination and how we see. Dan Winters gave a really good informational lecture on the YouTube about the optics and perception, seeing, you know, the prism of the eyes and the compression and stuff, and the way that we internalize, which I thought was really cool. Each of the divisions has its own type of drums, songs, dances, and loa. Thousands of loa exist, since each family can incorporate the dead ancestors into a form of loa, such as Catholic saints becoming canonized. So that's where I want to get at, to show you the morph and the many different arrays in which we can depict an energy. So I was talking about there was these three different phases and stuff we like to do. We stuck with that three, you know. male, female, and child aspect of something, you know, the male and female, and then what it could make, the potential of the what came out of that, the creative energy that came out of that. Possession, as stated previously, is an ultimate religious experience. When a person is possessed by the Loa, it is said that he is being ridden or mounted by the Loa. The possession no longer has his own personality. The possessed by the god no longer have their own personality. They're being mounted. Take that concept, that fractal. And who's trying to be God? Who's depicting themselves as God? Who's mimicking God with technology? Who's mounting you? Who's riding you? What's the King's Law? The right to F-U-C-K? Who's getting screwed? And it all lines up with the seamen and the pirates and the court system and the ship. Okay? The piracy, the theft, the usurping. He is the vehicle which the Loa speaks and makes his wishes known. And this is the imagery that we're seeing, that's a part of our essence played out in front of us. Why it's so easy to say, to see something visually and then to want to model ourselves after it as if that's God. Especially when it's depicting themselves as God. Consciously, and God we trust, with your face plastered right there. And everything that we see that is God, and Jesus, you know what I'm saying, with the heart symbolism and, you know, and playing with us. That part of us that was sleeping, that they knew that was sleeping. There was a de-evolution in technology because we used to have these chi energies running our stuff where we didn't have wires. Duke of Tears gives a really wonderful archaeological, historical lecture on the Moorish, Asian, African history, you know, and the giants and stuff, you know, and the calcified giants and trees and stuff like that kind of go along with it. There's an earth history that many of us are not familiar about because we were simply indoctrinated. It's mind control, you know, like Manchurian Candidate, in order to steer us away from doing what we would have done to govern our own energies, which does dictate and steer society in a direction. So we weren't able to do that or be accountable or responsible for ourselves. So somebody else has been doing it. Somebody else has been taking care of this arc of information. When I remember one of the books that I was reading, I left it on a cliffhanger about the Jews. The Jewish depicting our cultural energies. There's people in cahoots working together like a machine, just like our different tribes and different ways of expressing ourselves and God work together. So they're working like a male and female aspect of principles, you know what I'm saying? Government, spiritual, you know, physical, you know, finances, you know, just warfare, you know, the spiritual warfare that gets initiated and played out on us each year, each day. I mean, they meet up and actually do that. Was it Walnut Grove or some other place where they'd be meeting and stuff like that to discuss certain things, or I don't know. I was invited to Spring Grove. The possessed person no longer has his own personality, but becomes the Loa, who therefore turned the horse. He is the vehicle through which the Loa speaks and makes his wishes known. Okay, the vehicle. We have a lot of, it just, side note, Revelation's apocalyptic symbolism with the horses depicted, and the horses' interpretations as depictions of these spirits, plagues, and things like that, right? Reverse engineer it. Daeans called Veldus, Vaudous. He continues through the description of the Petra or Don Pedo dance. My disclosure is that these talks are for people who care about other people and are thinking, for people who want to grow, for advanced for those of us who can empathize and have intellect, who are trying to purge ourselves of the programming and also be useful, who don't want to be typical and just be their interpretation of us, you know, or their interpretation of them, but better than that, and know we can be better than that. So we gather all the different pieces to comprise the best collection of ourselves that we can be, realizing that we're an individual composition of a collective, right? And we just put in our 10% of our talents and abilities allotted to us by way via the creator, right? The creative energy. That's where talents and abilities come from. As with the voodoo, the dance consists of the shaking of the shoulders and head. By this shaking is extremely violent. And to the ancient, to further the black gazelle brandy with which they have thought to mix with gunpowder, well pulverized. An effect of this drink hastened, the intensified by the movement, is so great on them that they enter into a reverberal fury with real convulsions. As they dance, they make the most horrible contortions to the point where they finally collapse in a sort of epileptic fit, and which bowls them over. They enter into a state which seems close to death. It was necessary to prohibit strictly the dancing of the Don Pedro, because it caused a great distortions and inspired ideas of controversy in the public tranquility, be it in prohibition or electrical effect. The spectators themselves shared in ecstasy, and instead of stopping their chanting when the frenzy began, they redoubled their level of voices, accelerated their beat, and participated in the critical movement shared in it up to a certain point. Now, what this was saying is that in their observation of us dancing and playing the drum through these voodoo dances, right, through what was our way of creating with the different essences and things of the earth, and experiencing the feelings of those and communicating with them through our very vessel, our ship, our ka, our ba, right? And so we brought that stuff with us from the ship as a means of medicine, as who we are, right? And a lot of that was distorted within its interpretation by people who didn't understand what it was, or didn't want us to understand what it was. Obviously, St. Mary was here describing the possession he attributed to brandy and gunpowder. The fact that this epilepsy he called it out could be attributed to the dance rather than the drink apparently did not occur to him. Since the state of possession was desired, it was natural that the spectators would redouble their effort, and a possession was imminent. By way of the beat and the sound, it was going to happen, but the gunpowder got him there quicker and helped to, like a pistol, you know what I'm saying? Like a match, like a flame to set that spark off so they could get to dancing. Okay? And that was an alchemy that was used in this. Now, I'm not saying whether it was right or wrong or good or bad. I'm saying that's what we were and how we depicted ourselves, and how by morphing the way that we internalized who we were and what we did, by morphing it into a thing that's evil, into a thing that we can attribute to non-beneficial, it's a lie and distorts the way that we look at ourselves, especially when you turn around and you see the mirroring of our culture through these other religious institutions, mirroring ourselves back at us like deacons, which are actually like these energies that came across through the dance, ways that our ancestors and our deities and the energies speak to us. Now, mind you, these saints, it's already said, are disguised, right? What they usurped is disguised within the Catholic saints. And they take these saints and they're usurping energies from them. They even have holidays that fall on certain sectors, vectors of energy, right? Like equinoxes and things like that. They have certain days where energies of the essences of these energies come through and are manifested on the earth, and they're pulling from these things by way of their interpretation with what they can see. Okay? And that's a way of usurping. So it's okay for them to have it and for us to see them as God, or for us to see other things as responsible or legitimate or something useful or beneficial, as long as we don't see it in ourselves. We don't see ourselves in it, okay? Which is the reverse engineering of ego. It's like self-hate. You know what I'm saying? It turns in on itself, because you have to be able to look at yourself as both in order to create, or you're stagnant, okay? We have to have spin in all the energies. If thought is an energy, you still have to have spin. Obviously, Saint Mary was here describing possession that he attributed to brandy and gunpowder, okay? But that's what they used to make that spark. One of the most questionable of the writers about voodoo is Her Majesty Consul General in Haiti, Spencer St. John, writing in 1889. An anonymous article in the New York World also contributed to the atmosphere of horror. The opening paragraph of the article, "Cannibalism in Haiti!" But who was really eating people during this time? That's when they were taking us melanated people and making medicines and stuff out of them. They're making cookbooks out of them. You know? Out of our body parts, they were healing. They thought, yeah. They were eating us, okay? Making medicines and all kinds of stuff. They still use melanin and sleeping medication, right? And a lot of stuff. They're still eating us. Yeah. Some months ago, the statement was made to the New World by a reputable resident of Haiti that the human sacrifice to the god voodoo are of frequent occurrence to the republic, that the practice is well known to the government, and that the sacrifice is almost always followed by a cannibal feast. That's because they realized that there was energies attached to it, and they immediately started to sacrifice children and all that kind of stuff to Baal for financial gain. So they started tipping the scale, not so women and men could be happily joined together and create well and understand each other and build a loving society, but so that they can get capital gain. We're going to, kill a child, or, to appease the spirits that they shouldn't have messed with in the first place. We're going to make some sacrifices. So you're looking at any other way to commune. But we had a way to commune, and it wasn't always by way of sacrifice. There's many ways to sacrifice, to spend time, to exchange energy, and one of them was the way that we do things by storytelling and dancing and singing, and we share our Shekinah, we share our Kundalini energy, we share the essence of ourselves. We acknowledge that that part of ourselves is a part of Yah, is a part of our Creator, and we share that part, that purified part of ourselves with one another. As late as 1929, and the Republican of W.B. Seabrook, the magical island, the eras and fictitious views were still being projected into the white American Republic, okay? Meanwhile, all these different occult civilizations and secret organizations and stuff are growing and growing and growing, and they're taking our stuff. So they villainized it in our face and in society, like they villainized the female aspect and women, right? But behind closed doors, they're using all this stuff. Handing all kinds of cookie jars, all kinds of cars, running around doing whatever you wanted to. These eras and fictitious views were still being projected into the white American public, okay? Whereas Voodoo, Fire, and Haiti was published in 1935. So they're publishing books with us looking all crazy and stuff. And that's what a lot of these authors and stuff where I went through were really upset, because they were studying African spirituality or African dance or African culture in one form or another, even studying religious backgrounds, and they saw the connections, the synchronicities, you know, and through syncretism you can see the different threads and stuff, like Anansi, like the folklore. There was ways that we told stories and stuff that depicted a much fairer view of the way that the world worked, and ensured us learning our lessons about life much more efficiently. It wasn't so lopsided, like for instance, storytelling and fairy tales in our culture is all butterflies and rainbows and fluffy and stuff. Well, that's not the way that it originally, you know, started out. Stories were there to teach us things about ourselves and about other people. And if we're only learning the positive aspects, then we're not complete, and we're not whole. We're only learning one side of it. For instance, here's a story. The way our African fairy tales, folk tales were told is, yesterday is about this time I ate up tiger balls. Oh, wait a minute. Do I want to tell this story? This is a okay, I'm going to tell you this story. Okay, I'm going to share one of these stories. I told you this is going to be long, right? To get the feeling. This is story 28, the latest song. One day, Anansi, the briar tiger, went to the river to wash themselves, and Anansi looked over the briar tiger and saw that a big and handsome man he was. So he said to the briar tiger, as you are such a big man, if you want to bathe in that nice spot, the big blue hole with your big balls, you're going to drown yourself. You'll be so way down. You better take off and leave them here on the bank. Tiger said to Briar Anansi, well, you have the same problem, so you take yours off too. Anansi said, you take yours off first, and then I will. So the tiger took his off first, and Briar Anansi said, go on in the hole, Briar Tiger. Let me see how light that makes you. So Briar Tiger got in the water and started to swim. And he didn't pay attention to anything else but how light he was in the water. Briar Anansi never did go in. Instead, he grabbed the balls that the tiger had left and ate them up. You are what you eat. Boy, that's ballsy. But Anansi got frightened at what had gone, and so he ran away from the river and went. Oh, so he wasn't ballsy. I guess you can't really. He wasn't ready for those kind of balls. And so the river and the big monkey town. But Anansi got frightened at what he had done, at what had gone, and so he ran away with the river, from the river, and went to the big monkey's town. He found Briar Monkey and said to him, "Briar Monkey, did you hear the latest song they are singing down in the riverside?" Anansi said. "Yesterday about this time, I ate up a tiger's balls. Yesterday about this time, I ate up a tiger's balls. Yesterday about this time, I ate up a tiger's balls. Yesterday about this time, I ate up a tiger's balls." Now Big Monkey was never much of a singer or dancer, so he drove Briar Anansi away, saying that he didn't want to hear songs or any other kind of nonsense. So Briar Anansi left and went down to Little Monkey's town. And when he met Little Monkey there, he said, "Briar Monkey, I was down by the riverside and I heard a sweet song there. Everybody there was singing it, and it was so sweet." Anansi sang, "Yesterday about this time, I ate up a tiger's balls." And he sang it all the way through. Now the little monkey, he was one who loved those songs, and he said, "Sing that song again so that we can hear it, so we can all hear it." So Anansi began to sing it again. "Yesterday about this time, I ate up a tiger's balls." Monkey just fell in love with that song and had a dance that night just so everybody could hear it. And when Briar Anansi heard that, he was glad because now he could go back to Briar Tiger. When he got back to the riverside, there was Briar Tiger looking up around his balls. Looking up all around for his balls. And Tiger said, "Briar Anansi, I can't find my balls any place." Anansi said, "Ha ha! Just now I heard them singing a song in Little Monkey's town." Anansi sang the song again. He said, "Yesterday about this time, I ate up a tiger's balls." And Briar Anansi said, Briar Tiger, if you think I am lying, just come with me to Little Monkey's town." So that he and Tiger went. And they got there, and Anansi told Tiger that they had to hide behind a bush to listen. And when they did, there was a little monkey dancing and playing that same tune that Tiger heard. Anansi said, "Briar Tiger, what did I tell you? Didn't you hear me say that they were singing songs about you and calling out your name, making fun of you?" And all this time, Monkey kept singing, "Yesterday about this time, I ate up a tiger's balls. Yesterday about this time, I ate up a tiger's balls. Yesterday about this time, I ate up a tiger's balls. Yesterday about this time, I ate up a tiger's balls." Now Tiger heard that Briar Monkey was going to have a big dance that night. So he marched right up there to Briar Monkey and asked him for his balls back. And Monkey said that he didn't know anything about his balls, only that the song that Briar Anansi had taught them. So Tiger said that he was going to fight everyone there. But Little Monkey sent a messenger to Big Monkey, and asked him to send a lot of soldiers quick to beat Briar Tiger and Briar Anansi too. So when Briar Tiger and Briar Anansi saw how it was going, Briar Tiger took into the bush and Briar Anansi took into the housetop. And that's where they had to leave, and that's where they have lived ever since. Jackal Mantara, me no choose any. Oh, Jack Mantara, me no choose any. This is from Jamaica folklore. That made my heart feel really good. Why? Because of the realness, right? They were really teaching us to be prepared for life. Like, you better look both ways, kiddo. That person coming to you could very well not be who they're depicted to be. But you won't. Please don't call me while I'm on a live feed. And a matter of fact, unless you have business or some valid question about the spirituality or the essence of the lesson, please do not call me at all. My mind is very busy and I'm constantly studying and trying to, and not trying. I'm studying, I'm communing with spirit, I'm finding my own balance, I'm sharing what I learned, I'm working on learning how to be in direct alignment, you know, with what our Creator would have me do, regardless of whatever obstacles I may have, or even a free road. Sometimes, you know, a clear road could be an obstacle because you're supposed to be developing something else. You know what I'm saying? So, work with me. That's what I'm saying. Work with me, okay? Don't work against me, because this is the medicine. You know, my Casa Sukasa, we're sick because they wouldn't let the medicine in. Let the medicine in. Okay? Don't do the gang stalking games. Don't do the egotistical games. Don't lust after me, because I'm your mama, your sister, your friend, your cousin. Okay? If you don't have anything to say regarding this kind of stuff, we wouldn't have anything to say anyway, because I can't talk to you. And if I can't talk to you, we're going to have the same problem that I already have with my husband that knows that, you know what I'm saying, we're not agreeing. Anyway, I ain't even going to go there. Okay? Things have to change. Relationships change. Okay? I work on being as honest as I possibly can. Oh. Now, really funny. I'm an Aquarius, right? And I come across, I was told that my energy is very male, that I'm acting like a dude. And I'm like, no, this is on a side note, because, well, actually it isn't, because we're talking about the female principle, female energy in a way that's been distorted and morphed. Now, they have us twisted that the female energy cannot speak her own mind, that she can't be honest, that she can't be straightforward. And then when you're not straightforward and you're not speaking your mind, you're playing these female games and stuff like that. So if you're not doing it, like, it's very confusing. You can't let them dictate stuff to you, because you'll end up being their depiction, their interpretation of you, and not your own composition that the Creator gave you to be. So that's what I do. And many times, teaching or learning is considered, or being straightforward, considered a male trait, right? But it isn't. They confined it to the woman teaching the children, right? And the babies. But keep your mouth shut when it comes to a grown man. Then when you're finding the uneven distribution of the essences of energy and the powers that be, namely those distributing and regulating the female energy of the planet, right? That's the teaching. The things that women do, that mothers do, is what's being distorted right now by a predominant Eurocentric male energy, you know, with the phalluses and stuff, and a depiction of the fractality with, like, the phalluses, the oblongs. You know, those those. I hope I'm saying it right. Oblongs. They're just a long straight line of cement or something that they have going up out of the ground like an antenna. You know, and that's the depiction of the male frequency. Okay, and I already stated how important that is, because as above so below, so we have the energies up there corresponding with the energies down here, and because we're behind schedules and our technology has been derailed and then on a decline, you know what I'm saying, they reverse engineered it to the point where they didn't know how to utilize the energy, and they couldn't plug in to utilize the chi energy, the female force, the Shekinah part of it, right, with the electricity and stuff. But they did learn how to make machines and, you know, and do the wires and stuff. And so we have electricity where we use the light switches and stuff, and we had the fireplaces where they use the wood and stuff. But there was a time when we were able to plug into the actual energy grid of the planet, a part of it, connected like that, where the actual force field was a part of us. And there's times when I dance and do my Qigong, and you can actually see the chi energy move about through the vortexes or the body's aura, the energy around the body and stuff. Okay, and that's the chi energy, the healing principle. Okay, so some of the things that we brought with us was the instruments used for sacred dance were mainly percussion. Yes. All right. Percussion, sacred drums, rattles, bamboo, tubes, iron plates, hoe blades, called the ogan. The ogan, which was struck by another piece of metal. Now, listen to the phonetics: ogan, organ, organ, frequencies, vibrations. The drums were considered sacred, baptized in formal ceremony, and never used for anything other than sacred dance. I'll be right there. Hold on a moment. According to the Dunham, the sacred drum, or rada, was used, there's that word, the rada, and invisible sets of threes, including the mama, okay, the largest, the second, the second, and the bula, or the kata, the smallest. She also wrote that the form and style of the rada was imported intact from Africa. The peto drums, usually two of a set. Just go ahead do whatever you're doing, because I gotta finish what I'm doing. I'll pass. During the ceremonies, the drums appeared to control the proceedings. While they followed the movements of the dancers, they still set the tempo of the ceremonies and took breaks at times they felt necessary. Okay? So the drummers set the pace. Maya Dara stated that upon the drumming falls the burden of integrating the participants into hominogens collective, and the drumming which fuses the 50 or more individual into a single body, making them move as one, as if all of these singular bodies have become linked on some thread of a single pulse. You think they don't know what music did? The priest is powerful. The priestess of Mambo led the ritual and nearly always underwent possession, while the drummers rarely became possessed. Okay, the initiators of the drum rarely became possessed. Not that they didn't, but the dancers receiving the drumming which was like the heartbeat, you know what I'm saying, we're able to be possessed by Aloha. And not everybody, you know. Only a certain portion was able to. Oh, here we go. By no means. Oh, I'm gonna have to make this a part 2. I don't. It's at 10%. Oh, I still have all this. Oh, it's just getting good. Oh my gosh, I hate that. Don't you hate that? Okay. Wait a minute. Lost my place for a second. Where were we? Anyway, it said out of 120 people that were dancing, right? Maybe only about 20 people would come under possession of the Loa, of the ancient, of our ancestral deities, to be able to give a message. Now these churches, they give a message, right? They're messengers. They portray themselves as messengers. All right, I'm going to make a part 2 and share, because I have to. I have to charge my tablet. It's dying on me. But there's life after death because we can recharge. What? We got a plug. Okay, so I'm going to finish the history when I finish this, and then go into the Daecans, the dance, and the Daecas. Now I shared a lot of that, but it goes into this whole other thing, and it's just so beautiful, this dance of light, this dance of life. And we even get into man,